Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. A Friday bounce helps trim some losses this week, but the Sensex and the Nifty end in the red for the third week in a row, the longest losing streak in 2024 so far. Crude oil prices set for the biggest weekly loss in over a month despite a rebound on Friday. International gold prices hitting a record high amid safe haven buying. The death of Hamas chief Sinwar does not mean the end of the war, says Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu. The statement comes amidst pressure from the US and other Western allies to call for a ceasefire. Iran says Sinwar's killing will strengthen the spirit of the resistance. The board of Zomato is likely to consider an 8,500 crore rupee fundraise on the 22nd of October. Sources say the move will take domestic shareholding above 50%. The company is likely to ask RBI to cap foreign shareholding at 49%. That's an exclusive.
But I think India is a very important strategic market for anybody who's serious about international aviation.
As British Airways marks 100 years of flying to India, Global CEO Sean Doyle promises more flights and better connectivity, says India is their second largest market and the airline has ambitious expansion plans. That's an exclusive. US authorities identify the Indian intelligence official allegedly involved with the foiled attempt to kill a Sikh separatist Pannun in New York as Vikas Yadav charged him with murder for hire and money laundering. Pannun is a US citizen who's designated as a terrorist by the Indian government. The government suggests significant tweaks to the RBI's draft circular on bank dividends, bats for value creation in banks instead of high dividend payouts to shareholders. That's an exclusive. The Supreme Court agrees to hear airports' economic regulatory authorities' plea against airport operators fixing cargo and ground handling charges, dismisses arguments raised by Delhi, Mumbai and Bengaluru Airport. The regulatory bodies had moved the apex court after a TDSAT order barred it from imposing tariffs on certain services, including cargo and ground handling. With just over a month to go for the Maharashtra elections, the opposition alliance finalizes seat sharing for 260 seats. Sources say the Congress will get the lion's share, followed by Uddhav Thakkre's Shiv Sena and then Sharad Pawar's NCP. The ruling alliance is in final stages of arriving at a seat sharing formula. Well, let's start with the market action. We saw a rebound this Friday, which paired some losses for the Sensex and the Nifty for the week. The Sensex gained over 200 points and the Nifty gained over 100 points today. So that's where it closed, 81,224 and 100 points high on the Nifty. The mid-cap index also closing about 200 points high. The Nifty Bank saw an 800-point jump. So financial stocks outperformed this afternoon. But despite the Friday bounce back, the markets have ended the third straight week in the red. Now, this is the longest weekly losing streak so far in 2024, and financial stocks have been a clear standout this week. The Nifty Bank Index has gained 2% in the last 5 trading sessions. Well, here's a key news point that's moving the markets worldwide. China reported a GDP growth of 4.6% in the third quarter, and this is slightly above expectations of a 4.5% growth rate. However, the pace of growth is slower when compared to Q2, and the economy grew at 4.7%. The concerns over demand continue to linger as growth in China is expected to remain below 5% for the full year. The big global story: more than a year after the Israel-Hamas war began, Israeli Defense Forces claim that they've killed Yahya Sinwar, the alleged mastermind behind the October 7th attack on Israeli soil. Israel's military shared drone footage of the Hamas leader sitting in a dilapidated apartment in Rafah just minutes before he was killed. Hamas is yet to officially confirm Sinwar's death. But is this the end of the war in Gaza? Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has declared this as the beginning of the end, and the war will continue until the remaining hostages are brought home. US President Joe Biden has urged the Israeli Prime Minister to move on and progress towards a ceasefire in Gaza. US Vice President Kamala Harris, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron, among others, have also called for a ceasefire. Iran said that Sinwar's killing will strengthen the spirit of the resistance. Iran-backed Hezbollah warned of a new and escalating phase in its war against Israel. Meanwhile, Israel continued to pound the Gaza Strip and Lebanon. Its air force has struck 150 targets in the last 24 hours.
This moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. And it must end such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end. To the people of Gaza, I have a simple message. This war can end tomorrow. It can end if Hamas lays down its arms and returns our hostages. Those who would harm our hostages, I have another message. Israel will hunt you down and bring you to justice.
Benjamin Netanyahu there. Meanwhile, crude oil prices edging higher today, but still on track to post the biggest weekly loss in over a month. The GDP data from China sparking demand concerns even amidst the escalating tensions in the Middle East. A surprise drop in U.S. inventories also helping a mild rebound today, but Brent remains below the $75 mark. That's as far as crude is concerned. From crude to gold, safe haven buying continues to push the yellow metal to new highs. International gold prices touching an all-time high of $2,700 per ounce. Gold has been trading nearly 22% higher compared to January in the spot market. Back home, the jewellery industry remains upbeat about festive demand for gold, even as prices continue to soar.
Festival season is all looking good, poised for, I'm hoping for very good growths. We saw very good sentiment surveys initially, where people had very positive response towards jewelry buying this year. We do that every year in the few months leading up to festive, and it was even higher sentiment than last year.
Well, here's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Zomato's board is likely to consider an 8,500 crore rupee fundraise on the 22nd of October. According to sources, the move will take domestic shareholding above 50%. Nimesh is standing by with more. Nimesh, we were all wondering about what this fundraise was for, what it's about. Take us through what you know.
Well, all eyes will be on Zomato next week as the board meets on 22nd to not only consider the results, but also a surprising fundraising. I understand from sources that the company is likely to raise close to $1 billion via QIP issue, nearly 8,500 crores. Now, the key question is, market is a bit surprised at why they're raising funds, because they're already sitting on a lot of cash. Now, one of the technical reasons I understand is they want to raise these funds via QIP to domestic investors to bring down the combined FDI-FII limit below 50%. Once the fundraising is done and the FII holding is below 50%, Zomato, I understand, is likely to write to the RBI to cap the FII holding at 49%. Now, this has been very important because this would mean that there are no further restrictions on the e-com business, which is the Blinkit, which has been the key business for Zomato over the next couple of months. So, important board meet to track next week, where I understand Zomato board is likely to approve $1 billion fundraising via QIP issue.
All right, Nimesh, many thanks. Now, shares of city gas distributors like IGL, MGL and Gujarat Gas plunging after a 20% cut in their gas allocation through administered price mechanism. Brokerages say that these distributors will have to hike prices to maintain margins. CNBC-TV18 was the first to break the story. Sonal Bhutra joins us now with more. Sonal.
Well, yes, a big fall in stock prices today, and brokerages, they are talking about how it would impact their margins. Let's talk about Jefferies first, because they think that now, because there's a shortfall, it will be filled by imported LNG. Remember, imported LNG is around 50 to 60% higher in terms of pricing, and that's why EBITDA per unit will be impacted by around 2.3 to 3 rupees per SCM across the three city gas distribution stocks, and 6 to 7% price hike will also be required for margin neutrality. And if that does not happen, there will be sector derating that they anticipate going forward. ICICI Securities doesn't think there will be sector derating, but they think price hike is important, anywhere between 4.4 to 6.2 rupees per kg. If the price hike is not taken, there could be an earnings impact of anywhere between 20 to 32%, highest being for IGL. But considering there are a lot of assembly elections coming up, Delhi, Mumbai, Maharashtra, etc., it could limit their ability to raise prices going forward. Morgan Stanley says that lower allocation of gas would be benefit for upstream players like ONGC, there's GAIL, there's Oil India as well, and city gas players will raise prices by 5% over the near term and in calibrated way over the next few months. But they say limited impact for IGL and Gujarat Gas. For IGL, because they already have lower margins in the CNG segment, so not a big impact. And also for Gujarat Gas, it has only 25% exposure to CNG. Largely, it's an industrial player. So not much impact for these two, but yes, for Mahanagar Gas. MK says that 4 MMSC MD of gas will be given to Opal's Petchem plant, and this would be beneficial for ONGC. This would add around 7 to 8% of ONGC's production and increase EPS by 2%. This would be a structural change. So Morgan Stanley has a different view from the other players, but largely it has come in as a setback for these players.
Sonal, many thanks. On to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. The government has suggested significant tweaks to the RBI's draft circular proposing new rules for the declaration of dividends by banks. Now, sources tell us that the government wants value creation in bank stocks to be prioritized over high dividend payouts to shareholders. Sapna standing by with more details. Sapna.
Well, the government has sought significant tweaks to the draft circular that the Reserve Bank had brought out, to receive comments on its dividend policy for banks. On 3 to 4 aspects, the government has communicated its views. Number one, the government may not be totally in favor of the capital adequacy ratio as one of the benchmarks that RBI has suggested for dividend payouts. That's one. Second, also having a net NPA ratio up to 6% in any given financial year for a dividend to be paid. The government feels that this may be too relaxed a condition. Also, the net NPA range moving within a band of 1% the government again thinks that this is way too relaxed. It should be a tighter band of 0.5%, for those dividend payout ratios to be worked out. So on both these two elements, these two important aspects that RBI has suggested as the benchmarks for future dividend payouts, the government has had basically differences. The third but not the last, return on assets. The government wants return on assets to be included as one of the criteria for declaration of bank dividends. And going forward, the government basically wants, value creation to be reflected in the bank stocks and not in terms of hefty payouts in the form of dividends to shareholders. So this is where the matter rests. We have not really heard anything from RBI so far on these draft norms. We'll have to wait and watch and see if the regulator comes up with something further or not.
All right. Many thanks, Sapna, for joining us. The Securities Appellate Tribunal has stayed a 25 crore rupee penalty imposed on Anil Ambani by SEBI. But Anil Ambani will have to pay 50% of the penalty amount within the next 4 weeks as a condition for the stay order. Anil Ambani has appealed against the SEBI ruling on the 22nd of August. SEBI accused Anil Ambani of bringing a part of a scheme to siphon funds from Reliance Home Finance, so SAT. Staying that, but with conditions. The big newsmaker this evening is British Airways marks 100 years of flying to India. The global CEO Sean Doyle has promised more flights and better connectivity to tap into India's exciting aviation market. Speaking to me, Doyle said that India is the airline's second largest market. He also believes that India will power the airline's ambition of being a travel tech company, housing more than 2,500 people in its engagement centre. Take a look. How important is India for British Airways today? And what's the aspiration? What's the ambition in terms of market share? Because it's still fairly small in comparison to the aspiration that you have.
Well, I think India is our second biggest market. It is strategically very important. We have a lot of links from a trade and a diaspora perspective. We think air service is a very critical catalyst for the growing economic relationship that's emerging between the two governments. But also we employ a lot of people in India. We have 2,500 people who work for British Airways here. And in fact, yesterday I had the privilege of opening up our new engagement centre down here in Noida. So we have a great team here. They're very much part of the British Airways family. And they make the experience in British Airways, very, very, I think, comfortable and fit for purpose for the Indian market.
So, you talked about this being your second largest market and a very strategic market for you. Now, what is that going to entail in terms of future investments, in terms of future hiring, and in terms of future expansion, from a connectivity point of view?
We're investing $7 billion in modernising British Airways, and that's well underway. You will see more and more of our new product on the Indian routes. Our Club Suite, which is an award-winning business class experience, is now on nearly every route, and by the time we get to the end of next year, nearly all of our flights will have that experience. We're also investing in new technology, so a fantastic digital experience, and of course we're modernising our IT infrastructure. But generally, whether it's the digital experience or the onboard experience, we've very, very ambitious investment plans. And, we're only starting in British Airways on this very extensive modernisation programme.
I'll talk to you about the modernisation programme in just a second, but let me labour a little bit more about the Indian market. And, if you look at the IATA data as well as the IATA forecast, India is being positioned as one of the fastest growing commercial aviation markets in the world today. From that perspective, what's the kind of demand outlook that you foresee?
I think that's obvious. Even compared to China, I think Indian travel per capita is about 1/10 of what we see in China. So the growth is going to be exponential. I think everybody will want to serve the market. I think it's a very exciting time for international operations into India, but also for the domestic market. But I think India is a very important strategic market for anybody who's serious about international aviation.
Well, that's British Airways' Sean Doyle. He also spoke to me about how British Airways deals with possible bomb hoax threats. Remember, we've seen a flurry of hoax bomb threats that have plagued the Indian airlines in the last few days. Doyle said that he hasn't seen anything of this scale in a long time.
I think, airlines have to take the appropriate action that they feel is the right thing to do, and I would support whatever decision they take.
But is the threat assessment done at the airline level, or is it done in conjunction with the regulator as well as the
airport and the airline
agencies?
and the security agencies will be, very much involved. And we use all of the assets that are at our disposal to make the assessments. I haven't seen something on this scale in quite a while, but I couldn't really comment on the specific issues here because I'm not close to it. But other than we've well-established protocols that we enact to make sure that, we stay safe.
Well, that's Sean Doyle of British Airways. Time for a break, but up next, US authorities identify the Indian intelligence official allegedly involved in the foiled attempt to kill Sikh separatist Pannun in New York as Vikas Yadav. That and more when we return. Well, news just in, Kotak Mahindra Bank has acquired the personal loan book of Standard Chartered Bank in India. Ritu joins us now with more. Ritu, take us through the details behind this and the rationale.
Well, Shireen, this is quite interesting. One, because of the kind of stress we're seeing build up in the unsecured portfolio. So this is a space where most of the lenders are adopting a more calibrated strategy. That is one. Number two, this is the first major acquisition we're seeing coming in under the new CEO, Ashok Vaswani at Kotak Mahindra Bank. Now, they have entered into an agreement. The deal is not yet done to acquire Standard Chartered's personal loan book to the tune of 4,100 crore rupees. This transaction is still going to be subject to various approvals and conditions that have to be met for the deal to be consummated. Of course, the value of the portfolio may run down or increase subject to when the deal is being closed. So, that number will, of course, move a little bit from there. Importantly, Kotak has clarified that this transaction consists of loans that are all classified as standard loans according to RBI regulations. Standard Chartered on its part says that the decision to sell this personal loan book is in line with their focus to, continue to grow in the wealth, affluent and SME segment. So, there are very few banks in India, foreign banks, that have a retail presence. Standard Chartered was one of them. And now you have even Standard Chartered selling their retail portfolio to Kotak Mahindra Bank. Not a very surprising move as far as the foreign bank Standard Chartered is concerned, but yes, an important one for Kotak Mahindra Bank, where they've also spoken about the need to strengthen or to grow in the unsecured segment, where the bank has, had a sort of a cautious strategy over the last 3 years. So this will be a significant addition. Of course, we're going to ask the management about this when they declare their numbers tomorrow in the evening.
Okay, Ritu, many thanks for joining us. Now, the US has identified the key accused in the foiled plot to assassinate Khalistani separatist Gurpatwant Singh Pannun as Vikas Yadav. The US prosecutor filed charges of murder for hire and money laundering against the former Indian intelligence official, alleging that he directed the plot remotely from India. Parikshit is standing by now with more details. Parikshit, what does the US indictment say?
Well, the US indictment says that Vikas Yadav is an Indian government official, somebody who was working in the Cabinet Secretariat, which also houses the RNAW, or India's Foreign External Intelligence Gathering Agency. They say that Vikas Yadav is someone who has intelligence gathering and security experience, somebody who has worked with the CRPF in the past, somebody who has been an assistant commandant, and he was responsible for actually hiring Nikhil Gupta and promising a criminal associate $100,000 for murdering Gurpatwant Singh Pannun on US soil, and $15,000 had actually exchanged hands as well. Now, that criminal associate was an undercover US law enforcement official. Among the charges that are there, murder for hire and money laundering charges, alleged conspiracy with the criminal associate, attempt to assassinate a US citizen on American soil as well. They're also saying that all the property that was used, either in monetary terms or in real terms, which was used in the commission of this crime, must be returned to the United States. So far, the US government has not sought the extradition of Vikas Yadav. The Indian government, in a press briefing, had said on record that this person, Vikas Yadav, without naming him, is no longer in service. He is not a serving government official. They have been very quiet on the charges that are there in the indictment, but sources in the government have been saying that no one should be presumed guilty and the law should be allowed to take its own course.
All right, Parikshit, appreciate you joining us. Now, the two political alliances in Maharashtra are firming up their seat-sharing deal ahead of the assembly election. Sources tell us the opposition alliance comprising the Congress, Uddhav Thackere's Shiv Sena and Sharad Pawar's NCP have finalized the sharing formula for 260 out of the 288 assembly seats. Santya joins us now with more. Santya, take us through the Maha Vikas Aghadi seat-sharing formula.
So every election in Maharashtra differs from the last because of extremely complex and volatile nature of the state's politics. That's why there's no uniform or fixed formula for seat distribution. But finally, Maha Vikas Aghadi has reached to an argument for 260 out of 288 seats. Out of these 260 seats, Congress is likely to get 110 to 115 seats. Uddhav Thackere's party likely to get 83 to 86 and Sharad Pawar's NCP around 72 to 75 seats. If we consider Lok Sabha elections as some sort of benchmark, during Lok Sabha elections for MVA, Uddhav Thackeray got the maximum number of seats in the seat distribution, but the Lok Sabha elections results changed everything and it changed the bargaining power among all these parties. So Congress for MVA this time is likely to get maximum numbers of seats for assembly elections. If we talk about the Mahayuti alliance, for Mahayuti, BJP is asking for 150 to 160 seats, Eknath Shinde is asking for around 70 to 80 seats and Ajit Pawar is asking for around 40 to 45 seats. And like Congress, but in a very different manner, Ajit Pawar's bargaining power has also drastically changed because of his party's poor performance in the Lok Sabha elections. So for Mahayuti alliance, key leaders are going to meet Amit Shah tonight, and the final seat distribution is going to be determined in that particular meeting. But in Maharashtra, it's a very complex game for both the alliances to keep the interest of all the partners in mind and come up with a formula which suits everyone.
All right, Santya, many thanks for joining us. Well, that's the latest there as far as the Maharashtra elections are concerned. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. Before we wrap, as CNBC-TV18 celebrates 25 years of excellence, we invite you to the most anticipated event of the year, the CNBC-TV18 Global Leadership Summit on the 14th of November in Mumbai, where we bring together visionary policymakers, industry leaders, trailblazing startup founders. This is where the roadmap for India's next 25 years of growth and global leadership will be charted. So go ahead and book your seat right away.